Wikipedia is a slander farm. If you're out in the wild on social media and you come across the term Comicsgate, what that means for you will probably very much depend on where you start, who your friends are, who you hang out with, what corner you reside in. Maybe you've heard the term before, and you have vague recollections of something from years ago. Maybe it was related to Gamergate. Maybe you even know who Ethan Van Sciver is. In the 21st century, comic books are a niche, and independent comics are a niche of that, and Comicsgate is a niche within that niche. So it's no surprise that most people have no real idea what Comicsgate is. And if they do run into the term, how do they go about finding out? Comicsgate happens mostly on YouTube and Twitter, and while those platforms are incredibly accessible, it's not like you can just jump into someone's feed or onto someone's live stream and instantly get a clear picture of what this is all about. We always joke that if you ask 100 Comicsgaters what they think Comicsgate is, you'll get 100 different answers. And that's probably reflected in the kind of content they put out. Depending on whose live stream you land on, you could get a potentially very different picture of who CG are and what they do. So what are the uninitiated supposed to do? Head to Google, type in what is Comicsgate? As it is with most things, the number one search result is going to be Wikipedia. And while that's a great resource if you want to find the atomic weight of iron, for anything even vaguely nuanced or especially controversial, these days Wikipedia is little more than a slander farm, a hub of propaganda, serving a very exclusive sliver of the political spectrum. Comicsgate's Wikipedia page is no different. And while those of us in Comicsgate have certainly shaken our heads at it, even gotten a good chuckle, I'm not aware of anyone who's actually attempted to break down all the falsehoods contained on this page in a clear, methodical way. So I think that's what I'm going to try and do. This will no doubt be a series of videos, because I want to go into these sources and see if there is actually any evidence to any of the claims made on this page. I'm going to take it slow, give some much needed context, and essentially attempt to debunk the lies we're seeing here. I'm hoping that when it's all said and done, this could be a series that can be shared around whenever anyone pops up to say, well, what is Comicsgate? What do they do? Or when we hear that tired refrain, Comicsgate is a hate group. Maybe you could just link this video series as a form of rebuttal. So I guess we should just jump right into it. And if we start with this first sentence, it says, Comicsgate is a right-wing campaign in opposition to diversity and progressivism in the North American superhero comic book industry. Now, since this is presented without evidence, I think we can dismiss it without any evidence. But I will offer this rebuttal. Comicsgate is, at its core, apolitical. But I do understand the confusion. Over the years, Comicsgate has become kind of a refuge for openly conservative writers and artists. And a lot of them are some of the most prominent figures in the group. So I guess it is understandable that outsiders might assume, well, I see a lot of these conservative creators congregating over there in Comicsgate, therefore that must be a right-wing group. But this is just a sign of the times. The reality is, you cannot be openly and proudly conservative or right-wing and work in the North American superhero comic book industry in 2022. You haven't been able to do that since, really, 2016. That isn't to say there are no conservatives working in comics. There are, but they keep very quiet about it, they keep their heads down, and they just go along with the flow. The truth is, Comicsgate doesn't care who you vote for. Conservative? Cool. Left-leaning? Cool. In the middle? Don't care. And that's why I say it's a sign of the times, because these days, any group or place that allows safe harbor to people on the right side of politics is automatically considered right-wing. And that's what they're saying here. Comicsgate allows vocal and proud right-leaning conservatives to work in, create, promote, and enjoy comic books. We don't discriminate. And the fact that we don't discriminate doesn't make us a right-wing campaign. It makes us free. In Comicsgate, you're free. Now, the part against being a campaign in opposition to diversity and progressivism is again another misunderstanding. Comicsgate rose up in opposition to a specific kind of all-or-nothing ideology that has certainly become associated with progressivism over the course of the last few decades. But to accept that we stand opposed outright to diversity and progressivism would be to accept the premise that this new progressive movement, those who we label social justice warriors, have forced onto us. We don't accept that premise. The premise that says comics have only ever existed for and included depictions of straight white men, for example. We don't accept that. Or the assertion that unless a story includes an array of characters made by creators who tick off a slew of different identity traits, then that story can't be considered diverse. We don't accept that either. There's the assertion that merely by race swapping or gender swapping or changing the sexual orientation of existing characters, a story becomes better, somehow more appealing. We call that pandering. We call that tokenism. And those are the sorts of things that we stand in opposition to. We don't oppose diversity and progress. We just don't celebrate and idealize the very specific kind of diversity and progressivism that seems to permeate all forms of media these days. And we take that position because we think pandering and tokenism, checking off quota lists, are no way to tell a good story. And they certainly don't push the medium forward. In fact, we take the position that it's pushing the medium backwards. We don't believe in segregating creators according to their identity groups. We don't think people should be hired purely because of their skin color or their religion or race. We don't think that when you pick up a comic book hoping to read an actual story, you should be expected to sit through what's little more than an ideological tract, a political pamphlet masquerading as a comic. We don't think readers should be preached to, lectured, hectored, and belittled by the characters they once loved. Characters that have been cynically warped into essentially mouthpieces for activist writers. We think all people who love comics, who want to work in comics, who want to read comics, should be able to, regardless of what they look like, or who they sleep with, or who they vote for. And that's why this claim of us being in opposition to diversity is so laughable. Comicsgate is incredibly diverse, naturally diverse, as one would expect a group formed on the internet in the mid-2010s would be. There are creators and readers of all stripes hanging out in and around Comicsgate, taking part, having fun, creating, reading. But what you probably won't find us doing is virtue signaling, trading on our identities in the way that these social justice progressives demand that we should. Instead, we're selling our books, our art, our characters, and ourselves, who we are as people and artists and writers and fans. Not what hangs between our legs or who we go to bed with at night, or again, who we vote for. And if you're someone who stumbled on this video and finding yourself skeptical of what I'm saying, thinking this doesn't line up at all to what you've heard about Comicsgate, I won't ask you to do anything else other than look at the like ratio on the video. Read the comment section. Is it full of Comicsgaters angrily disagreeing with me? Are they screaming right-wing political talking points while they denounce me? I'm going to hazard a guess that they're not. Because the overwhelming majority of Comicsgaters probably agree with me on this. Now, it's taken nearly 10 minutes to get through a single sentence. It was an important sentence, to be fair. But clearly, if I'm going to be going this in depth, this video series is going to take some time to get through the entire Wikipedia page. So I'm going to call this part 1 and cut it off here. I'll probably be putting these out weekly. And in the meantime, if I could just ask you to hit like, subscribe, follow me over on Twitter at TheLucentComic. And if any of this does sound intriguing for you, please do check out cgnow.net, where you'll find a whole range of comic books produced by CG creators that are available for purchase right now. So until the next video, hope you're well, and I'll see you later. Bye.